Welcome to the latest episode of the AMTC 2021 interview series, where I am joined by Markus Simon from McKinsey. Hi, Markus. Thank you for joining us. I think if we could just start, if you could provide a brief overview of your role at McKinsey from a broader perspective, but then maybe focusing in on additive manufacturing technologies and their adoption.
Happy to do so. I'm a partner with McKinsey in the Cologne office in Germany, and I'm leading our client work at machinery and industrial automation clients. In that role, I'm also responsible for our additive manufacturing work, not just in Europe, but also globally.
Amazing. So within that role and the work that you're doing, what do you see are the key themes around additive manufacturing right across different industry sectors and the industry itself, I suppose?
Yeah. So what we have seen is tremendous momentum in the last year. So the industry is extremely fast in terms of developing new technologies, new use cases, getting new client customer verticals into space. And what we still see is that there is quite a lot of fields where the industry has to work on and where work is currently quite important. One is the field of new technologies. We still have the situation that in quite a lot of spaces, basically the sheer technology is missing with which you could go into new use cases. The second thing is about reliability and repeatability of certain qualities, especially in the industrial field. So when you talk about, well, how could additive manufacturing get a space and gain momentum also in the industrial field, it's all about having certain qualities with a certain speed, with a certain repeatability at a good cost level. And there we still have quite a lot to do. And then the last thing is very much about the reliable of the production system. Yeah? So be on the safe side in terms of, can I really rely on, from starting with manufacturing, additive manufacturing as a user up to the end of the service of a product, can I rely on the quality of the support of the OEM in that space?
Okay, so I guess you're talking about AM for production applications there. And in terms of the industrialization of AM for those production applications, another sort of hot topic in manufacturing in general is automation. So with automation strategies and AM strategies, do you see there's an overlap between the two?
Yeah, it's quite interesting. So the fields are a bit indeed overlapping, and you also find a lot of similarities, I would say, between the fields. So if I look, for example, in the past when you talked about the introduction of robotics, which is very much used as a field for automation possibilities in manufacturing, you could see that for about 50 years, robotics needed a lot of startup push, a lot of investments to get it started and to get it really scaled up. And I see a lot of similarities between the two kind of technologies. Yeah? And I think you can learn a lot if you look at robotics, for example, and how they did the scaling in 5 or 6 decades.
And do you see it evolving even more over the next, say, 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I think it will get much, much faster. It depends now also on which industry verticals will start applying additive manufacturing. We have seen in the past, especially the prototyping field, the small series, or very small series production field, which was applying additive. The big question is now when and which next verticals will really apply it. So we have seen a lot in aerospace and defense. We have seen a lot in medtech, which is much higher quantities of parts. Still in the automotive field, good use cases are missing. But when I have discussions with my clients, they are all working with tremendous effort, speed and investments on it. So they are betting on it. And I've seen quite a lot of situations in automotive when they really start investing in topics, think about e-mobility, then it starts scaling. And I would compare it a bit with that, like autonomous driving, like e-mobility. When they start investing in it, it gets momentum, and they do it. They do it. They have large budgets now focused on additive manufacturing.
So you think the investment is a key driver for them doing this?
Especially at the user side. I mean, there has been always good investments from VC funds, from PE firms in the industry overall. Yeah, but the question is if the users in a certain industry really invest in identifying parts which could be printed, in investing into changing the designs in a way that you can print it, in really daring to bring it to the production line, that also costs money in qualification and so on. And I see that a lot of the OEMs now particularly focus on certain investment budgets for this, getting 3D printing industrialized. And that is new. Not just for the pilot parts, but really also for the serious production.
Yeah. So I guess we've covered why they're doing it, and the funding is a big part of that. But do you have any insight on how they're doing it? How important are events like this, the collaboration, the partnerships, those sorts of issues?
I mean, first of all, I think it's extremely important that you are in a part of the ecosystem, part of the exchange of information. Because there is a lot of insecurity in the overall technology. Yeah? So a lot of companies have either not tried it so far sufficiently, have only tried this new technology in certain areas. They tried it in plastics, but don't have good experience in metals. And I mean, the field of pitfalls is very large. To give communities a possibility to exchange their experience and to learn from each other, I think is extremely important, especially for players like the OEMs, like the basic material players who want to get into the business with new customers. They have to find forums and events like this one, so that these positive experience can be exchanged. So I think this is an extremely important point.
Absolutely. So I guess when we talked about those three verticals, the aerospace, automotive, medical, they are the key industries and have been for a while. How do we get more companies from different sectors to engage with additive manufacturing? Yeah,
I see a big thing, as I said, is this exchange of information. I also think that centers of competence can play a big role. So there are attempts of setting up centers of competence for additive manufacture much more than in the past. So I think this is quite important also to get certain things established, like, for example, a much better break-even point, which is important for automotive industry. So this is a piece, to my mind, on top of this production system point I mentioned at the beginning. The break-even point is probably the second very important point to get automotive industry in the position that they really use additive manufacturing at scale. Because currently, I have to say, in most cases, still the old-fashioned production and manufacturing technologies, they deliver the same quality with better prices. So we need much more research and much more competence on that space to get to a good break-even point. And there, I think these centers of competence are extremely important.
So what are the main drivers from the AM perspective specifically that will take them beyond the traditional processes that you're saying are better costs? There must be something in the functionality or the complexity that's driving the technology.
So this morning, it was mentioned in one of the presentation as a fourth dimension. I think this is a good description of it. So it must be more. So if you talk about mass production or higher volume production, which is for automotive industry important, to be honest, I doubt that the sheer and simple break-even calculation will ever lead to very good situations if you compare part by part on a price level between additive manufacturing and the old-fashioned production technologies. But if you think about additional value adds you could bring into, like geometries which allow certain functionalities which were not allowed before. If you think about the weight of a part, which can be extremely lower compared to the old-fashioned manufacturing ways. If you think about these add-ons and find a way to calculate a value out of it, then I think the math could work and the business case could work. If you think about getting down stock levels, for example, in the spare parts area. And if you think about how typically OEMs, automotive OEMs calculate, these factors don't calculate or are not valued so much. Yeah? So if you reduce the warehouse stock by 20%, it currently does not really go into a break-even calculation, but it should. It should.
Okay, so I think we've covered most of the questions, but just thinking about the event here, is there anything that's particularly exciting you at the moment in terms of themes and issues and people?
What is extremely interesting, I have to say, and that's a phenomenon through the COVID situation overall, is there's extreme momentum in M&A activity. So I had a lot of discussions about consolidation in the market. This was also part of the panel discussion today. So how do we see the consolidation in the space? And I see that the market is getting hotter. So we see much more consolidation. I would currently say the the 20 biggest companies in this space will in 2 years not be the 20 biggest companies any longer. And the interesting piece is, it's not only the consolidation of the existing players, there are also a lot of new ones coming in with new technologies who basically dominate the growth currently.
Do you think they'll get swallowed up, though, by the bigger companies, the ones coming through?
I'm not sure, because sometimes they have breakthrough technologies. And if they have the long breath to stay alone and not to take in a big strategic investor, I see some of them really in a position to get also very large without having a strategic investor like an existing OEM currently.
I actually think that would be quite good for the sector in terms of the growth, but also the innovation.
Yeah.
Because sometimes when these smaller companies do get swallowed up, that they lose the innovativeness that they had.
Yeah, unfortunately, sometimes.
Yeah, but then it's business, mergers and acquisitions. They keep on happening, don't they?
Yeah, but I would really say this is one of the big themes currently. When you talk here to the people in the conference, I would say half of the people are basically discussing consolidation currently. That's quite interesting.
So when you say that, are you talking about big companies that are looking at little companies, or are you talking about the little companies that are being looked at?
Yeah, but I'm also talking about the larger companies looking at other larger companies.
Oh,
so it's
okay.
really on a level of the medium and large size companies. It's more coming together and founding really large market leading positions.
I suppose end to end.
Yeah,
to use that phrase.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, well, on that note, I think we will finish up. But thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.